The first motion is end the NSS boycott. So, is there anyone who'd like to do a speech in favor of the motion? A speech in favor for the motion? Yes, okay. You have 2 minutes to do that. And whenever you're ready, we'll start timing.
So the NSS debate has ultimately been turned into one over the relevant merits of tuition fees. The view currently taken by Warwick SU is that the NSS and the TEF will be used to legitimate tuition fee rises, and therefore a boycott will help to disrupt this process. While I personally disagree with the union's position on tuition fees, it seems crazy to me to potentially jeopardize a rich stream of information that could help our university improve its services and its overall student experience. Other SUs in the past have used the data of the NSS to improve specific departments of their universities and improve overall standing of teaching in their institutions. By boycotting the NUS, Warwick SU are only harming the nature of their teaching on campus and potentially delegitimizing other gains made in the wider movement, all for the sake of a debate over tuition fees. I therefore beg to move this motion. Thank you.
Yes? Yeah.
Can I just point of order? Are you boycotting the NUS or NSS?
NSS.
NSS, thank you.
Do we have a speech speaking against of the motion? Yes? Luke, please.
Nearly 2 years ago, the government published its HE Green Paper, which chilled the student movement to its core, not least because of the threat to students' unions because of new plans to increase tuition fees. Now the Green Paper has become the Higher Education and Research Act, and the move to increase fees is all too real. There is one notable difference, however. The link between the TEF, the mechanism for increasing fees, and tuition fees has been delayed by 3 years. This is the result of intensive SU and NUS campaigning and lobbying, including the NSS boycott. But getting students to refuse to participate in the survey, which will be used to assign universities a grade, which in turn will allow universities to increase fees, we have highlighted the flaws of the TEF to the extent that even the government is not convinced by their own plans. This now presents us with an important opportunity. We have 3 years to build a movement and build momentum behind a stronger NSS boycott to capitalise on the current success we've seen this year across the student movement, or the government will not be defeated. The NSS boycott is one of our last viable options to stop your fees rising. Collective student action is the only way we will stop this. Do not surrender your only option for resistance. Vote against this misleading motion.
Do we have a second speech in favor for the motion? If not, then we'll open the debate to the floor. So, does anyone have any comments or questions about the motion? Yes, Luke. Luke, please.
So, at the end of my first speech against, I said that this motion was misleading. I want to outline how it's misleading. So, in the motion, it says NUS. The motion to continue the NSS boycott and national conference didn't pass. I think this is worded quite disingenuously. The motion wasn't even debated because of lack of time, alongside a whole other host of HE's own motions. So for that reason, one of the first notes is entirely misleading. Actually, the boycott is, in the words of higher education policy experts, was a qualified success. So to imply in this motion that it's a failure is also disingenuous. It's not been a failure, absolutely not. The motion also implies that having policy that's failed on our books makes our SU look weak. That's factually incorrect. We've still been able to win huge amounts this year. We've already managed to stop a tuition fee rise for current students. We managed to secure week 0 after 10 years of campaigning. If that makes us look weak, I think you're totally missing reality there completely. And it says that it claims that final year students that do not support this. Well, we've seen 1,000 students have boycotted the NSS this year. If that doesn't show support for the NSS boycott, I don't know what does.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you. Time's up. Thank you. Yes, the person at the front, please.
Thank you. Right, so there's two more things that I think need to be pointed out. That one, this is not the motion while the speech indicated this, is not because I feel at least that way, because the people who submitted this think that NSS data is valuable, but I think that the people who submitted this are not comfortable with the Warwick Students' Union being a free education union, and that's why they want to stop the NSS boycott, which is linked to a campaign against tuition fees, and people are uncomfortable with that. So this is one of the ways you're taking. And secondly, the NSS is not only having an impact on students, but also on teaching. When teaching is measured through these criteria, it will adapt to these categories. And this is also linked to the second motion, right, where universities are trying to force their staff into producing certain research and certain teaching techniques that reflect well in the NSS. And this is detrimental to teaching, to academic freedom, to academic liberty, and in the end, also to our learning as students.
Thank you. There's a person at the back, please.
Okay, so opposers to this motion have largely situated the debate in terms of a debate over tuition fees. And yes, the person who spoke before, you are correct. I do disagree with Warwick SU's position on tuition fees. But I'm just going to make the case for my vision of why I don't think the tuition fees are as bad as Warwick SU claims them to be. You just said that Warwick is a proudly free education university. That's fine. I mean, none of us here will pay for our education at any point during our education experience. Tuition fees should not be seen as debt. It should be seen as what it actually is, a graduate tax. It's a graduate tax for a period of 30 years after you leave university, which gets written off after 30 years, and it's a tax of 9% over £21,000. £21,000 is roughly the median income of a citizen in the UK. Abolishing tuition fees would mean the richest students after leaving university would pay less. This is why I'm quite bemused by, recently it's been in the news quite significantly.
Sorry, but time's up. Maybe you can make a comment later. The person at the back, yes, please.
Thank you very much. So just come back on that point. You're quite right to say that the effective design and how these actually paid is quite similar to a tax. Well, let's actually look at the design of perhaps one of the most unfair taxes in history. If you actually look at who pays most on tuition fees, it isn't actually the richest in society. There's those who go from being the poorest to going to being the richest. I mean, can't really go through the calculations now because that'd be a bit boring. But effectively, if let's say you're from a very low income household of let's say maybe, I don't know, £9,000 a year, you then have to take out the full loan. Perhaps, let's say, be a doctor. I'm sure we all for more doctors. You end up having to take about £75,000 in total, plus 3% interest a year. You'll pay far more than, let's say, someone of the same income who came to be, who also wanted to be this. This is incredibly unfair tax. Not only also puts it directly in the hands of private companies, and is only paid for by the young. The tax was implemented as effectively the fear from the Tory government, who were afraid to, let's say, tax older voters, but instead knew that young people would put up less resistance, and instead tax them. It is important, incredibly important, that young people continue to fight against all of these motions. And
thank you very much. Thank you.
Hello. Okay, yes. So as fascinating as that exchange was, I think that we need to point out that it's not actually relevant to the debate at hand. We are a free education students' union. That is policy that has been passed by our students, and we have a democratic mandate to act on that. This is very much linked in with that. The second point I would just like to make is how I feel the Warwick SU turning against the NSS boycott, abandoning it at this stage, would actually be incredibly letting down not only students across the country, but actually also staff. I think it's important to remember that as soon as this was passed by the National Union of Students, UCU, the National Union of Academics, also passed a motion in solidarity with that, showing their support for it. This is disliked not just by students, but by staff as well. It is disliked across the sector, it is rejected across the sector, and we need to continue to stand as students in solidarity with staff who support these aims as well. So I really think that that is another very strong reason why we should continue the boycott, continue the campaign to stop tuition fee rises, and stop the devaluing of degrees.
Yes. Can you pass the mic to the person at the back? Yeah.
You rightly do say that this isn't a debate over tuition fees, but that is the main reason that Warwick SU and other student unions have given to boycotting it. Now, I get that you don't agree with tuition fees in general and certainly a rise in tuition fees, but to use that as a rationale to boycott and disregard what could be a really, really useful stream of data for not just our own university and improving its own services, I think it's ridiculous. It's really, really damaging. And there are other ways to fight tuition fees, as Warwick SU does with many demonstrations, and fair enough, I don't believe in that personally, but they have a right to do that, as you rightly say, a democratic right. I don't see why that policy should affect something like the NSS, which, as you say, is not to do with tuition fees. It's mainly to do with the level and the standard of teaching at Warwick University, and it could help us improve that.
All right, thank you. Can you pass the mic to Luke at the front? Thank you.
Just hopefully to settle something, we're debating a lot around the concept and tuition fees and saying that we're apparently being problematic by centering the debate totally on tuition fees. The government's doing this to raise tuition fees. That's their sole goal to do this. Oh, and also to totally devalue your degree by totally shaking up the higher education sector, destroying it as we know it. So you want to go to Russell Group University, right, be highly employable because you went to a really good university. Not going to count for anything because it's going to totally shake up the league tables, totally shake up the sector. And if you think the NSS is the only format you have to feedback, then you're totally forgetting the course rep and SSLC system that we run in-house. We have one member of staff running 700 course reps. If you're not engaged with that system, that's your fault. We have a students' union. We're here to fight for your rights. If you've got a problem, come and speak to us about it. The NSS is not your only option for feedback. Raise your voice. Boycott the NSS.
Do we have further comments on this motion? Yes, the person at the back, please.
Okay, I do take your points on board. What I would say to them is this, as kind of like a final closing argument, because I see we're not going to change each other's views really. I think that Warwick has a lot to gain from the NSS because, as you rightfully argue that some universities' degrees may be devalued. Well, Warwick University is a Russell Group university. The level of teaching at Warwick University is already pretty high. It's already ranked in probably the top 10, and I think it was number 8 in a recent ranking, I think the Sunday Times or something like that. We have a lot to gain from wholeheartedly using the NSS to prove what a good university we are. By boycotting it, yes, you may be delaying a £250 rise in tuition fees, but you will be also delaying the level of excellence that is given to Warwick in the league tables, because we simply put don't engage with the framework that's already in operation. So really, while it might be harming less good universities, the NSS, by showing them to be less good, I think that Warwick has a lot to gain from the NSS, and it could even bump our place up in the league tables quite a bit.
All right, thank you. I'll take probably... Does anyone have further comments on this before I move on to closing speeches? I can take your points. And is there anyone else? Does Nat? Okay, I'll take these 2 more points, and then we'll move on to closing speeches. Okay.
Okay, I would just like to point out that what was said just now is factually incorrect. In the mock TEF results that were already run, Warwick already lost a significant, it went down the league table a lot. I don't know the actual place, but it is factually incorrect that Warwick will rise with NSS data in the league tables.
Right, and can you pass the mic to Nat, please?
The NSS does not measure teaching quality or teaching excellence. So any teaching quality or teaching excellence that occurs at Warwick will not be picked up by the NSS. Hence, there's no problem with boycotting the NSS on those grounds.
Thank you. Can somebody do a 1-minute summary speech speaking in favor of the motion? Would anyone like to do a summary speech speaking in favor of the option? Yes, please. Thank you.
Sorry, you've got to excuse me, I was eating midway through this. So I'd like to summarise the reason why I think the NSS should not be boycotted. This debate that we've just had has mainly been over tuition fees. I understand that Warwick University, and probably a majority of Warwick University students, as shown previously in democratic mandates, don't want tuition fees, and therefore they want to disrupt this because they see it as raising tuition fees. If you don't want tuition fees, there's plenty of other things that Warwick University can do, and does do, rightfully so. So, protests, demonstrations, etc. I don't see the need to take that fight, which is separate to this motion, boycott the NSS, which could be really, really useful for improving teaching standards on campus solely for the reason of destroying tuition fees. If you want to destroy tuition fees, there are other avenues to do it by. You should value the NSS for what it is and how it could help us improve services here at Warwick. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you pass the mic to Luke to do the summary speech, speaking against of the motion? Thank you.
So I think fighting to scrap tuition fees is actually quite a commendable thing to campaign for. And I think most students would argue or agree with me on that notion. And just to kind of clear up a few things, this is about more than just stopping your fees going up by £250. They're going to go up by way more if we do not intervene now. And your degree is going to be devalued because the NSS does not measure teaching quality, it measures student satisfaction, in inverted commas, which will go to create this flawed table where Warwick's going to drop to 52nd in the mock test tables. So your Russell Group teaching experience will not count for anything when you go, when you leave Warwick anymore because of the test, because of these measures. This is about your fundamental right to access higher or further education without being punished for it, without being laden with debt they have to deal with later on in life. And we have gained so much ground with the NSS boycott this year. The national student movement, coordinated by NUS, has been huge. The government is intimidated by us. They've already conceded ground in it. We cannot stop now. We need to capitalise on that. So we need to continue to boycott the NSS. That means voting against this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on, should we have an indicative vote? So you can vote, well, it's only indicative, but at least we'll give an idea how favorable the motion is. So you can either vote in favor, against, or abstain. So voting in favor of the motion? Against? Abstain? Seems like majority of the people tend to be against the motion.